Welcome to the Charity Changemakers podcast, your weekly dose of inspiration and action for the changemakers of the world. Each week, we dive deep into the world of impactful charities. We connect you with the passionate leaders, the innovative ideas, and the real-world stories that are making a difference. Whether you're a seasoned non-profit professional or just starting out, this podcast is your chance to learn from the best and get fired up to make a positive change. We'll explore the challenges and triumphs of running a successful charity. We'll hear about the fundraising strategies, impactful programs, and the stories of the people whose lives are being transformed. But most importantly, we'll leave you feeling empowered and equipped to take action in your community and the organizations in which you work. So, buckle up, Changemakers, because we're about to embark on a journey of inspiration and impact.
Today on the Charity Changemakers podcast, I'm joined by Rob Burton, who's the Chief Executive of Leadership Through Sport and Business. We've got to have a great conversation and hear about his career journey into the sector, from military and sports coaching right through to today being a Chief Executive, and the journey that he's been on. There's some great golden threads through that about community engagement, about using sport, about making a difference and having an impact. And I hope you'll be really inspired by the conversation. Keep an ear out as well, because Rob gives us some great insights into some of his leadership approach and experience, and also some of the things that he's learned through his career. And the one thing that's been most important to him, he'll reveal that in the pod. So without wasting any more time, let's get on and meet our changemaker. Really pleased today to be joined by Rob Burton, who's the Chief Executive of Leadership Through Sport and Business. Rob, thanks for being here. How are you doing?
Yeah, morning. Thanks, Adam. Nice to be here. Thanks for the invite.
And great to have you on the Charity Changemakers podcast. As we do with all of these things, we want to start with just a few quick fire questions, just the opportunity for us and the listeners and the audience to get to know you a little bit better. So tell me, what's the most interesting, best place that you've ever visited?
Well, gosh, that's a straight on the spot there. I spent 4 months in the Falklands in 2002 during part of my RAF service, which was pretty amazing place. Yeah. Amazing wildlife, amazing scenery, and obviously some rich history there as well. So yeah, that's it, the Falklands.
Yeah, the Falklands, excellent. And RAF service, that's going to be an interesting one that might come up in our chat about career journey as we go through it. Continue then with the quick fire questions. What do you do to relax?
Football. I still play vets football, so that's over 38s. And as we touched on before we started recording, just got back from Valencia with my Ascot United vets team, where we played Valencia veterans at the Valencia training ground.
What an amazing opportunity.
Yeah, it's good.
And what you've not said there is that you managed to get on the score sheet.
I did. And if any of my vets football colleagues hear this, there'll be extra ribbing, because it was one of my better goals, and I made sure everybody knew about it at the time, as you can imagine.
Yeah, absolutely. You got to enjoy those moments, indeed. I mean, we're recording this at the end of the football season. I know you're a long-suffering Man United fan, but there might still be a bit of hope with FA Cup final coming up, right?
I think long-suffering's a bit harsh, when I think from the age of sort of 12 to the age of 34, where I tended to see them lift a trophy most years. So I think I had a good run. During I'd like to say my peak time of loving football was in my early 20s, which obviously coincided with a 1999 treble and lots of other trophies. So I'm happy to take a slight sort of setback from that. But yeah, it's not great at the moment.
Trophy, hopefully, potentially just around the corner. And Rob, last quick fire question for you. What are you reading at the moment?
At the moment, I am reading. What's I'm reading at the moment? You know what? At the moment, nothing live. I've got a few podcasts on the go. So I've got one, the Private Football podcast, and I've got a few sort of financial podcasts. I'm trying to upskill in the areas of finance and accounting for my charity knowledge. So a few more self-help books around budgeting and accounting. Nothing too exciting though, Adam. Sport-based podcasts and a bit of learning when I'm on long drives. So yeah, nothing on the radar for reading just yet, but more of a podcaster at the moment.
No, that's great. And I think when it comes to those sport podcasts, and obviously trying to step into this hosting of a podcast at the moment, I'm very much looking towards Gary Neville as my as my hero and influence as we move forward.
I think he's very
doing some great stuff on the overlap.
He is, and also as a guest as well. He's been a guest on a few recently. I think the Diary of the CEO, his episode was really, really good. delved into his family life, and it's quite sort of touched on some quite emotional points for him, and it was a really interesting listen. So if you haven't listened to that, I don't think you need to be a massive football fan to listen to that episode. Really recommend that one.
Yeah, brilliant, good. Okay, well, lots of recommendations, ideas then for people to go away and have a look at. So obviously, the point of this podcast opportunity for us to talk with senior leaders within the charity sector. I'm still to speak to anybody, and in 5 years of working in recruitment, who had that absolute intention from an early age that they're going to work in the charity sector, and many people that have sort of fallen and found themselves in it. I'd love to hear more about your journey. We've already heard about this thread, clearly that love of football, and there's that bit of that thread through your story. But yeah, how did you end up working in the charity sector?
Well, what it was, Adam, it probably goes back to the sort of RAF days. I did play football as a youngster, played to a sort of reasonable semi-pro level, and then also I had a time playing abroad. So I went over to New Zealand and played over there in the New Zealand National League for 18 months. Really enjoyed that. And it was only when I came back that it was either go back to school and crack on, or it was a case of joining the forces. And I chose the forces option and had 4 really, really exciting years in the RAF where I learned a lot, played football, but started coaching. And that was the sort of start of my coaching pathway, which fast forward a few years after leaving, I started coaching young people with disabilities.
Right.
And that was a real sort of pivotal moment, really. I sort of tended to enjoy coaching the young people with disabilities more than playing at the time. And this was back in 2008-9. I had my own academy for young disabled people in West London, in Hillingdon. And I like to think it was the time before, not before disability sport became fashionable with the Paralympics in 2012, but there wasn't much going on before 2012. After 2012, lots of amazing things happened. I was working with these young people sort of 4 or 5 years before that. And when 2012 finished and it was development in disability sport, that was my first foray into the charity sector. A local charity in Hillingdon, Dash Disablement Association Hillingdon. They're probably 40 years old now. They asked me to come along and set up a sports program for them. And that was how I got into the charity sector, through sport, coaching, disability, and then charities.
Yeah, that's amazing. And that community-minded, using sport out in the community to help, young people in a variety of different circumstances and backgrounds. And the power of sport, I think, is just incredible, right?
It is. It's something that's, I think it's life lessons from a young age. The obvious ones of winning and losing, teamwork. But I think you get the sort of more the hidden skills, the conflict resolution, dealing with tricky situations, all these things that come up in interviews right through your life. You're dealing with at the age of 12, playing football in South Manchester, where I've played, or whether you played in New Zealand in a decent league, or playing semi-pro at 25. You're picking up skills that you can take into everyday life in any sport, rugby, football, whether it be a team sport. Definitely pick up skills that you take into your career.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think just those life skills as well, right? I've played football, not to the level that you've played football, but wherever I've gone, moved into new places around the country, you always join the local football team or the local cricket team, and that opportunity to make friends, make people in the area, and those life skills of being able to walk into quite, sometimes what can be quite tense situations in a match day, most of the time, forgotten back by the time you get back into the pavilion or whatever after the game, and that camaraderie that you come. But there's something really important, I think, about that relationship building that you can learn through sports.
Absolutely. And then I've been living in this area in Berkshire now for 3 years. And the first thing I did when I moved here, after unpacking, was make contact with the local football club, which is Ascot United. They have a really, really vibrant veterans football scene, and at the time we had one team which I was lucky enough to be invited to join, and now we have 3 teams. We've just started a super vets to those players that are over 50, and I've been on a tour recently to Spain, playing football abroad with them, and again met friends that I've now played golf with, and now I socialise with. My partners met their partners, and the whole settling process in this area was through that sport network, really.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's just so important for your mental health, and like you say, that opportunity, to go and to relax, get away from the demands of work, which I'm sure we'll get onto as we speak. So got that sport, that entry into the charity sector, and that training academy, that setting up a sports program for a local community. What happened next? Where did the journey take you?
So I was there for 7 years, Adam. I was there for 7 years. I went in as a development officer at the time. The position was called. And it was a majority of sport, but it also involved an element of working with, at the time it was marginalised communities. So I work with a traveller site in West Drayton, looking at getting people from the traveller community get access to benefits, rights and entitlements, and that was really interesting and something I really enjoyed. And then it's actually, again, nipping back to sport very quickly, when I played at Ricelake Manor, who are now disbanded, Wealdstone have their ground in West London, we had a traveller play for us in the team. So it was a real good way into breaking into that community and breaking barriers by knowing somebody who used to live on the site, which was a real asset when you go onto a site where, you know, it's a different sort of place to be, and, you know, lots of people on there know each other really well, and going in as a stranger was tricky, but to be invited in by one of my teammates was a real deal breaker. So that was interesting. And I started off there as I said, development officer, and worked my way through, again, different pieces of work, started writing bids and managing people. I ended up being the deputy director there after 6 years, deputy CEO. The slight blockage there because my CEO was still working fantastically, and I learned a lot from her, but there was no way, it was a blockage. It was a blockage. So at the time, the council picked me out of the charity, backfilled my position, and dropped me into the local CBS, which was Hillingdon CBS, as an interim CEO for a 6-month period during a time of change, which was my first foray into the role of chief exec, and that would have been at the age of 30. So sort of 12 years ago. So that's how we got to the
It's incredible, isn't it? Yeah, I mean, just incredible how, you know, that work, you know, in the sector, that love of sport, and then that, you know, being able to come in and to make that difference in sports programs, but also the exposure that you got quickly to, you know, a whole range of different things, from funding to, you know, operational management. I'm sure there's HR that comes with part of that, working with boards of trustee. You know, that exposure within charity sector, you get very quickly, right? Yeah,
and the good thing with Dash at the time, we were bidding for contracts. So we had an independent living service, so helping disabled people in the borough access adaptations for daily living and aids. We also won the borough's first independent supporters contract, which was the very, very early onset of educational healthcare plans. So we were the mediation service contracted by the council to work with families of people with disabilities. And we had a mental health contract, which was slightly different for the organisation, but we held an advocacy contract, again commissioned by the council. So you go in there as somebody who wants to set up a sport program, and you end up managing managers who are managing mental health advocacy and you know, other sorts of delivery around selling, you know, wheelchair adaptions and stair lifts. It was really good grounding for the sector, with different sort of skills being needed to sort of thrive in that position.
And do you think your growth within that was, you know, at that point in your career was, like you say, you know, good chief executive, could learn a lot from them, but just that exposure, you know, you're having to roll your sleeves up, you're going to have to learn new things, learn how to put in funding bids, learn how to, you know, that stakeholder management right up to the council, right through to learning about wheelchairs and stair lifts.
Yeah, and I think that's the beauty of this sector. You know, we'll go on to my next role in a second. It was a lot bigger charity as my main CEO role. But even there, I didn't have a fundraising team. The fundraising would come down to myself, my deputy, and perhaps 2 or 3 managers. Really interesting. Again, at Dash, we had 14 staff. And my second job, I had 50 staff, which we'll come on to with the Age UK work. But I think in a small charity, you know, you need a lot of people who are good at a lot of things. You know, everybody has to have a specialism, but you need those skilled people who are willing to get their sleeves up and dig in, whether it be help organise an event, you know, without events training, which again is most of the sector, you know, whether it be help put a fundraising bid in, or a bid to the lottery, or whatever it may be. And then the day-to-day running of the charity, you know, people need annual leave, and it's very rare a charity, and a small to medium charity, has backfill for positions where people go away. So you're relying on your teammates, so to speak, to go and help in other areas of the charity.
And that, I mean, that always amazed me when I worked in a, you know, small charity. I guess what 10 sort of employees. You're absolutely doing everything, weren't you? From writing the main funding bids through to Children in Need or the National Lottery, through to, you know, working with the board, right through to, you know, I had to empty the bins on a Friday. I mean, that's what it came down to.
Well, so picking up the food on the way to an event, things like everything.
Yeah, and I think people who, you know, willing to turn their hand in that way are the people that we see thrive, you know, in the sector, and then those opportunities that then to progress from there. So you obviously mentioned, you know, from Dash, that opportunity to move obviously into interim role, which then led on to chief executive at Age UK Richmond.
Yeah, that's right. And that was a recruiter at the time approached me with LinkedIn. I'm sure many people in senior positions and not so senior have been approached by recruiters. And it was are you interested in this role? And coming from a heavy sports background, working with, marginalised communities, whether it was my work I used to do with a really good friend who I still make contact with now, Jez at Hayes Mosque, and working with the traveller side, going from that type of environment in Hayes, West Drayton and in Hillingdon, especially, that sort of lower part of Hillingdon where, there is deprived areas, to have the opportunity to go and be the chief exec of Age UK Richmond, and the areas in Richmond include Barnes, Kew, Twickenham, really more like fantastically, well-funded areas. There's no areas of deprivation as such. However, there was pockets in the sort of Whitton area. There was pockets, but a very, very different, not only borough to Hillingdon. I mean, you couldn't get further away from the client base. It was a really interesting move. And it was a move that was really important because it was a bigger charity, with 4 sites. And at the time, we had over 50 staff at the time. And it was a real big step for me, a bit of a leap. And, probably one of the best decisions I've ever made. I had a wonderful 4 years there. And as we all know, people may or not be able to work out that 4-year period did cover the middle 2 years of COVID. So again, really important time as a chief exec.
Absolutely. And we need to dive into that. And I guess, and within that Age UK, I mean, I'm just interested in that move then into, slightly bigger organisation. But Age UK is, I guess, is a federated structure where you've got a national Age UK and then lots of Age UKs around the country. I mean, is it, how much of that support in that chief executive role or help from the sort of national Age UK do you get and receive?
Really good actually. You have your sort of quarterly meetings with our Age UK CEOs. I was quite lucky in Hillingdon. We had a consortium called Hillingdon for All. It was a consortium of 5 charities that came together to bid for health contracts. And as part of Dash, where I was working at the time, Age UK Richmond, who are now actually Richmond, Harrow and Brent, they'd really grown. The chief exec at the time was really supportive when I joined Age UK Richmond, and I only knew him because I sat in many a meeting with health commissioners. So that broke the ice for me. Yeah. And we did have quarterly meetings with other Age UK CEOs. So, you're bouncing ideas with, Heather up in, remember them all obviously, Heather up in Barnet, or you'll be speaking to Guy over in East London. Some really, really good people to speak to. And that obviously meant, if you needed a policy or a procedure, you could, drop an email in, or has anybody dealt with anything like this or this contract? And there was lots of peer support there from other CEOs, which was really important to me at the time. And I know that still goes on now. Because my deputy at the time is now the CEO at Age UK Richmond, which is fantastic.
Yeah, quite often, talk to chief executives or people, so it can be quite lonely at the top, right? And especially in that chief executive where, obviously in charity sector and you're managing the board and expectations and then across an organisation. I really like that structure of, having that peer-to-peer sort of mentoring support, those that maybe got a bit more experience that can help those that are new into the chief executive roles or, have faced similar scenarios. That peer-to-peer learning is vital.
Yeah, and it wasn't just that. We went for a really big contract and we actually won and around 2018. And when you speak to Age UK London, who tend to coordinate the London Age UKs, or you speak to Age UK National, who are the national body, again, it's that structure. And there's a commissioning team, not only commissioning for work themselves, but they will gladly spend time working with you on your commission bids. So once the bid was written, virtually towards the end of the process, you then spend a day with Age UK. At the time, they were based in central London. I think they moved to office slightly now. And you'd get critique, you'd get that outside view with a critical eye, and it was really, really interesting. So I think Age UK support Age UK network, Age UK National support Age UK networks really, really well. And it was something that really helped me through my time. And, if anybody listening ever gets the chance to work for an Age UK network across the country, I'd say definitely try and work with them at any level. It's a really, really good charity to work for and with.
Yeah, great to hear. And what about, you mentioned obviously managing through COVID, managing a local charity where I guess a lot of that delivery of service was face to face and individuals meeting with individuals and offering that support. Talk us through, I guess, that response to managing a small local organisation through a global pandemic.
Yeah, it was extremely challenging, as you can imagine, especially those first 30 weeks where there was a lot of confusion. I think that's maybe where some of my military training came came in handy, because it's those skills I've not used for a while. And then, you're always taught to try and stay calm at times of crisis. And, I really did. It was a deep breath. It was a really, really tricky first couple of weeks. But again, I had a really good team around me. We mobilized extremely quickly. And we ended up within 2 or 3 weeks closing our 4 centres, turning them into emergency food hubs for the borough. So not only we could give these supplies to our older people, our clients, other charities, especially our partners in one of our contracts, would come and help themselves for their clients. So it was a really, really excellent piece of work. I'm not going to take probably 10% of the credit for. The centre managers mobilised into this this amazing team, and really we're on the front line. But we didn't make anybody. We didn't use furlough. We actually recruited through. We actually recruited through COVID. I'm really proud of the time. Apart from that first 2 weeks where we had to take a step back, and I'm pretty sure we were one of the only Age UKs that kept everything going as best as we could. We kept our handyman service going, which we're really proud of. We're not talking handyman service, putting a felt roof back on a shed. We're talking an older person with a carpet that's come up and no light bulbs. To me, the danger of somebody tripping in the dark outweighed at the time, and somebody going in with a mask and the windows open. But that was a tricky call on my behalf to put that through. But I deemed at the time it was appropriate. I'm really pleased we did, because we carried on. It works. It works. So we kept our advice service going. We kept our face-to-face work going. We did tweak some of our delivery. So we had a housekeeping service. We did emergency housekeeping, again, for hygiene reasons. We deemed it that, really poor hygiene and rotting food was more dangerous than something we didn't really understand at the time, with the correct precautions. And again, really proud that we did that again. But that was a tough one to sign off, especially when you go home at night and you think about what you've done. But again, we did it, and I had support from some good trustees and some skilled colleagues. Definitely making decisions that had so many ramifications that I hope I'll never have to think about again.
Yes,
I don't think I'd change much. I don't think I'd change much from that period, which is a really nice thing to say.
I think boards of trustees, my reflections on that period. I mean, it feels so long ago, doesn't it? The world was so strange at that period in time. But boards of trustees were just so vital for those organisations that could react well, but also to be able to make quick decisions and like you say, trying to mitigate and manage that risk. How did you find that sort of step into obviously chief executive world, and then dealing with a board of trustees, a bunch of volunteers with a set of different skills and experiences, and liaising and working with them?
It was pretty straightforward, I think, because the Age UK is, just by the way they're designed, and I inherited, are very structured organisations. Things tend to be very organised. All the policy and procedures are in place. You have the right delegations of authorities in place. Things that most charities are very good at. I'd say Age UKs are exceptional at. You monitor very heavily, and to keep your Age UK logo and your quality marks, you're reviewed on a regular basis, so things can't really get out of date. And there will be people listening to this, and everybody's been at anybody that works for a charity, including yourself, Adam, will always know that there's always that one policy that needs refreshing at a board meeting that might get missed to the next one. So nobody's perfect in that regard. There's always things that will potentially slip. But Age UKs were very good at keeping on top of things, purely because of the way they were managed, and the way we had to report to Age UK National, and the way we had to keep our quality marks to deliver contracts. We were really, really well versed in working with the structure, working to deadlines, and working to contractors' wishes. Really, so it wasn't particularly difficult. It wasn't, and the board were. And I think the other thing as well is, because all the board members were all local people at the time. Out of the Age UK, my chair was working at the time, and a couple of other trustees were working. But out of the 12 trustees, 9 might have been retired local older people, just by the design of the charity at the time. And that will have changed now, because obviously boards are changing all over the country. But I inherited a board with a majority of people that were retired, and amazing people with amazing careers who had the time to help the charity. So they actually got stuck in, and they were doing food drops. They were helping me with a little bit of strategy around making decisions, more so than they would have been able to during a normal month non-COVID, when we just tended to go off on our own and then report back quarterly for the board meetings.
Yeah. And those obviously that that work you've done on building those relationships from when you joined the organisation meant that you I guess you've got that trust and that being able to react quickly. And what about then managing a team, and a team and a culture of an organisation that I guess everything was rocked overnight. How did you motivate and really manage that team through changing services and changing approach?
Because of the individuals involved, that wasn't difficult. So everybody wanted to really get stuck in. So we would have been able to. There was discussions around furloughing people, and we committed to furloughing on full pay. If anybody was didn't want to or couldn't for health reasons, is probably a better example, to tweak their role. So, example, dropping shopping off, manning the food banks at our own personal food banks at our 4 centres. So people tweaked their roles to help, which was really, really impressive.
Yeah, I love that. It's exactly what you were saying about people in the sector working. They want to roll up their sleeves, crack on. We did a survey on LinkedIn a few weeks back, and over 90% of people say they want to work in the sector because they want to make a difference.
Yeah, exactly.
And I guess in that moment,
we all had friends who spent half a year just in the garden, chipping and keeping their town up and gardening. That's the decision of their companies. And I'm not talking about charities here, obviously. Some people had a lot of time off. We didn't. We worked harder, we worked longer, and we recruited more people. It's funny actually because my partner's German, and she actually had a short-term contract in Germany. She got a teaching contract over there in Bremen at the time, and so she was stuck in Germany. They locked down, and they were quicker. So we were apart for 7-8 months. But, that allowed me to really throw myself into work, which again, I don't know if that's a good or a bad thing, but it enabled me to just to be quite selfish, really, just think about work and with the team we had around us there, it was really, really professionally, it was probably one of the most rewarding periods of my career. However, you have to be careful how you word that because of the way the world was, but for purely professionally, and there was obviously some really, really sad, upsetting and traumatizing things happening. But purely focusing on the day-to-day 9 to 5, it was probably one of the most rewarding times to see how the team pulled together and some of the outcomes we had as a charity were really, really impressive.
And as you reflect on that time now and think about, what you learn in those moments of being chief executive of a charity, managing crisis, managing change, working in uncertain circumstances from week to week or day to day, hour to hour, some of the times through that, those early lockdowns. What is it you reflect that you take most, I guess, that's impacted your leadership now moving forward?
And I think it's clear communication. To me, that is a big thing, especially at times of change. And you get it wrong sometimes. Every communication isn't going to be clear. I'm laughing about an email I sent this morning about a staff meeting this afternoon. It's actually next week. So there's a really good example of a clear message. I got the week wrong. But I think it's really important if there's critical decisions. So I wanted to keep our housekeeping service going, and how I communicated that. This is the reason why. This is who I want to do it. Are you comfortable doing that? And if you are, this is how, and with a list of PPE, transport and rules and regulations. That to me worked. If I'd have potentially even got 12 people in a room to discuss it at that point, it probably would have got a little bit messy and disjointed. So I decided to make that decision to do that. Now, that's not my general style of management. I would rather, if it was example, my new charity, working on our vision and our mission when we changed the strategy, that's all about the team from top to bottom. Everyone works together. But when it was more of a lost into life and death decision to send people into people's houses, but it wasn't so far off at the time because it was so confusing. Right. I just needed to make a decision and tell people what we were going to do. Bounced it off a couple of people, obviously, my deputy, the trustee. But again, I just didn't have the time. And I thought it was the right thing to do. And that was one of the toughest decisions. You go home at night and you put that in place and you're thinking, God, I'm sending people into people's houses here. Not only the old person who's at the end of this visit, I'm sending a member of staff in. We don't really know what's going on yet. We're talking around April, when it kicked April, May. We're talking really early in the pandemic. But with old people whose family lives a mile away, the neighbours can't see them because they can't leave the house, and literally people stranded. So we had to really make quite quick decisions. And that was, I had to make that. I had to be rationale, and then I had to sort of trip that down. And in a way that isn't really my general style of management.
But like I say, you pulled upon skills and experiences from earlier in your career. You talked about obviously, influence of the military, and what that has of, managing in a crisis. And then thinking about that communications,
Yeah.
obviously from Age UK, obviously the opportunity then. I mean, it's great to, when I think about you and your role at Leadership Through Sport and Business, it's just that, so many different things from your career all coming together in one role. Do you want to tell us a little bit about the current charity and what it is services you deliver and what you do?
Yeah, absolutely. So LTSB, Leadership Through Sport and Business, was set up 12 years ago by a wonderful man called David Pinchin, who worked in the city, worked in banking and finance. And when he retired, he wanted to give something back. I think sometimes giving something back is an overused word for volunteering and people, but he genuinely did want to set something up to leave a legacy and to give something back. So LTSB works with young people from deprived areas. We really try and focus on the lowest 20% social deprivation index, which is like 30% depending where we're working. And we get these young people major roles with top companies, so career roles. And that's done by recruiting, putting them on a boot camp. The boot camp can go from anything from 3 weeks to around 8 weeks. And then we will then, the end game is we place them with a major employer, whether that might be NatWest, whether that be a law company, a marketing firm, whoever it may be. That's our main focus. And we only work in 4 areas. Those 4 areas are the technology subsector, marketing, law, and finance. They're our main sort of focuses. We're going to look at working in the insurance sector this year as well. So focused works in focused geographical areas in Manchester and Liverpool, up in Edinburgh and Greenock, then Birmingham, London and Belfast. They're our key areas at the moment for working in. And again, it's a pretty amazing charity.
Yeah, absolutely, and gone through a fair amount of growth is in the time that you've joined there as well. To talk us through, I guess, that work around strategy, growing the team. Yeah, what that's all look like.
Yeah, we've had. I think when any new leadership come into an organisation, I think it does spark people's interest to look around. And we had a couple of people leave relatively early at senior levels, so we had to recruit there. We did put a new strategy in place, which was signed up by the board in December. So January 2024, it's gone live. That's a 5-year strategy. And with that is growth. We want to grow as an organisation, and not only grow with the number of people who get jobs. We're looking at putting in new programs. So we're in the very early stages of designing a employer advocacy training package, which is going to be really exciting. So that's preparing a workplace for young people from socio-mobile backgrounds, and some of the tips and some of the skills we've learned as a charity over the years, and some of the things that they need to look out for when they're employing a young person who might be a carer, who might be not sleeping fantastically in a room on their own. All these things that come into a young person's early career. So that's that piece. A community program, which is going to be later in the year. So that's going further out into communities and really showing people what we do to help our recruitment. So working with youth clubs, working with college settings, and really try to sort of, get out in the community and shout and what we're doing. And with that, hopefully some work around employability skills in that area. And then the other one is, so that's it's the school piece, it's the education piece. So we're in the middle of mapping out a piece of work where we go into sort of year sort of 9, 10, ideally year 9, 10, 11 into schools and speak to students around their aspirations and what a career looks like. And it's not all about going to uni, having a career. Talk about apprenticeships, talking about transferable skills as they get older, and talking about a career in a way that they maybe not had before. Again, working in our areas where there's areas of deprivation. So place more young people, and then work on three new work streams are our main aim.
And those work streams that you talk about, I mean, it sounds very much about, that emphasis of the charity, and this might be part of the new strategy about that partnership working from, major corporations right through to local youth groups into educational, institutions. And I think we're seeing more of that across the sector around that partnership working. I mean, it'd be interesting to hear a bit about your experience, in that area.
I think the partnership working for us especially is absolutely vital. because we're an employment charity, not an employability charity, there's some amazing charities out there that are getting people ready for work, and long may that continue. I think where we are slightly different is we literally work with them, for up to a year, sometimes longer, to get them a job. That's the bit that's the tricky for us, and we can't do that without partnership working. Obviously, we need the employers. We also need the funders to fund the program to enable us to have put these people in front of our employers. Partners who may be listening, who want to get in touch, who have venues in London, Manchester, Birmingham, who can host a corporate insight day. Can they host a team meeting for myself and some of my colleagues? Because as you can imagine, as a charity with staff all over the UK, we don't have an office, because where would you put it? The 6 people in the Northwest will be, potentially all sat around an office, and my 5 in Birmingham won't be, and my 6 in London. We've got people in Belfast, as I mentioned, and Edinburgh and Greenock. So it's really tricky to know where the office is. So again, any corporates out there that can host us for the day, I'm really passionate about getting our staff together as much as possible. Bearing in mind the cost of travel. So that's what we use our partnership working to leverage as much as we can for the charity. As much as we can for the charity.
So obviously, recruitment over the last few years, in the time that you've been there, I think you've nearly sort of doubled the size of the team, and like you say, kind of in different parts of the country. How do you instill that, positive culture of an organisation and, ways of working together? I'd love to hear about how you manage, because, very different from that being on the ground as you have been in previous roles.
It's not quite doubling the actual headcount. What's happened is we've had some change. We've got new work programs in place, and we've had a change of structure. So we're going to be up to 30 people by the end of the summer. When I started, we had 22 people. And then with that, out of that new headcount of 30 people, we'll have 13 of those individuals will have been with us for less than 6 months. So at one point we had 9 adverts out for, I'm sure you kept an eye on. We had 9 roles out. We had 5 CDMs. We had a program director. We had a governance administrator, a head of ops. So really, a lot of thought went through. We went through a lot of meetings with the board, and we looked at structure. So the head of ops, for example, is a new role, completely new to the organisation. Looking at how we use our systems and how they talk together, as well as some HR skills. Again, going back to that, how many people here who are listening who work for charities would love a HR specialist? I think we all would. So we try to have that hybrid HR skill, head of ops skill, looking at what we do, so we could try and get the most out of individuals and have the biggest financial impact on the charity. I don't think there's many charities who have a full HR team, and with under £2 million turnover, I'd be surprised if they did.
That's right.
So it was a case of looking at what we do, how we do it, where, and putting the right team in place, again in line with the new strategy. So there's been a lot of work on there.
Yeah, and what's your response been like to recruiting those roles? I'd be really interested to hear, because obviously I'm talking to charities day in, day out who are struggling to recruit, but I'm not. I don't think that was your story, right?
It wasn't, Adam. And an example, 2 examples, it ends at the scale. So the governance administrator, which is purely a remote working role, remote really being home working because it's an administrative role. And our remote working for our CDMs and our development managers, they're out in the community, but it's remote. This is really a home working role. And because it was, we'd like to think we're competitive with our salaries, and it's home working, and it's a good charity, and people are starting to really embrace social mobility. We had 136 applicants, 136.
Wow. Yeah.
As always, as we all know, some will come from Belgium and the odd one in a different language that, completely are unfiltered. Sure. But we had a really, really good response. And then you go for your more specialist role. We were looking for somebody in our careers team in Birmingham. And even though we had some wonderful candidates, and we've hired a really amazing person, it was probably around the sort of 20 mark for the people that were relevant. So I think it depends on the specialism. And again, I'm not by any means saying that admin roles are the easiest because it was admin, but we wanted some governance specialism in there as well. So it was a little bit quirky than the average admin role.
But even still a great a great response.
Absolutely. We've every role we've advertised, we've managed to to hire, which again has been a first for me. We've not had to roll out second time. So again, we're quite proud of that. I think that shows the interest the charity sparks, and with some of the terms conditions we have, and again around that flexibility.
I think ultimately when it comes down to if there's a good benefits package that's competitive for the market, and the fact that you've got that flexibility, constantly is all I talk about all week is organisations is we've got our flexibility, because that is what is attracting individuals forward.
Absolutely.
So I mean, it just sounds so exciting, so much. So much going on. What I guess, what's your hope for the organisation in the future as it rolls out these new programs?
Yeah, obviously the obvious thing is we work with more young people, get them more leading roles. That's a fact. One thing we're really passionate about is the sport aspect of LTSB, and we've not touched on that. And again, as we touched on at the very start, as people can probably imagine, it really interests me that the sports side is how we really bring sport back into LTSB. We were doing lots around sport leaders qualifications and working with referees and doing different exercises as part of the boot camp before COVID. So really, we've got a bit of a blank canvas, and we work quite closely with Liverpool Football Club. I had a really good chat with Joe Lyons, the CEO of West Ham Foundation, yesterday. We're looking at doing some work with Joe and the team over at West Ham Foundation, doing a sport leaders course later in the year. But also, can we place our young people who've done a finance boot camp in the finance team at Tottenham Hotspur, which we've done very recently, which we're quite proud of. So again, sport, not only the sport leader qualification, using sport as a team building resource, using sport companies and organisations to place our young people again in careers that they maybe or maybe not, they've not thought about before. How can I, you go through leaving college and the next thing you're working in the finance team at Tottenham Hotspur as a Tottenham Hotspur fan. It's great to see those journeys of young people and their, and their future looks good.
Absolutely, Rob. I absolutely love that. I know when I was chief exec of a small youth local charity in Hampshire, we had a bike social enterprise, so not using sport, but kids that were teenagers, 16, 17, 18 coming in, and effectively if you can use an Allen key and a spanner, you can fix a bike, right? But the local Ford garage were involved, taking on those that really showing themselves well, consistent, turning up, coming there, and getting apprenticeships in a mechanics in the local garages. It's just great to see that journey, and just to, like you say, there's different pathways for young people that come from different backgrounds and areas, and that opportunity to thrive. So building those partnerships, those relationships with those foundations and those clubs are just I've been remarkable. I mean, if anybody had ever given me the opportunity to work at Sheffield United when I was growing up, I'd have been there in a heartbeat.
Exactly, exactly, and that's really important. And again, I sort of have those thoughts when I meet some of our young people and they're about to go for their first job at NatWest, who are a wonderful supporter of ours, and we've been working with them for 5 years. You've got people who know there's a big head office in Edinburgh, but the thought of them working there, they don't know anybody that works in banking in their family. They've got none of their peer groups family work in banking. So how do I work in banking? And that's LTSB. LTSB is just bridges that gap and enables these young people to go into these companies and have the careers that again they fall potentially out of reach. And it's not anything magic. It's just unlocking giving them the platform to succeed. And once they've got the platform, they're off. We've had some amazing stories from our young people. If people put in LTSB to YouTube or go onto our website, we've got case studies and hopefully some videos up there soon. On our socials as well, and encourage anybody to have a look and find out more about what we do. And again, I don't know if you share my email address after this or how that works, Adam, but I'm happy for people to contact me directly if you want to know a bit more about the amazing work we do.
Brilliant. Well, if you're happy, we'll tag you up on LinkedIn when we post all of post the videos. Absolutely. And post up the podcasts. And then if people like I say, if they're happy to contact you, you can drop you a message direct. Yeah, that'd be
Please
great.
Do.
Absolutely. And it just brilliant. No, and really inspiring. Really, clearly an organisation to keep an eye on as you roll out these new programs and opportunities, I guess, to work in more geographical areas moving forward. Just really exciting.
That's in our strategy for year 4 of our strategy, is to start really exploring a new geographical area, and then year 5 to hopefully have a pilot in a new geographical area, which will be really exciting. The tough thing is the tough thing for the ones we don't choose. And the brilliant thing for the location we choose is it'll have a huge impact on local young people from deprived areas, which again we're really proud of.
I guess if you were to stop and reflect on your career at this point where you're at, if you could talk to your younger self, you starting out that football, football and coaching, you could give yourself a piece of advice. What do you think it would be as you reflect on, your time in the sector?
Yeah, I mean, things like working as hard as you possibly can are a given. I think ask questions. I'm still asking questions all the time, and hopefully my managers, my CDMs, my admin team, I am not scared to ask them a question or ask an opinion on something I've done to gain critique, or to improve something. And I think that's something I've really, really taken on board over the last few years. From critique and appraisals and feedback is, it's not being selfish with an idea, and it's also not being scared to ask questions and work collaboratively with your team. And I think it's really important. I think that's how, LTSB are going to be successful, because we've got a fantastic board of trustees. I've got amazing directors level, and I've got wonderful staff delivering and working on our finance, working on our ops now, and working with our young people. So again, it's that teamwork ethos, and again, me asking them questions, them asking me questions.
It's really, really helpful, Rob. I think when we were talking about Age UK, and you were like, I can only sort of take 10% of the plaudits for what we were doing in there. I think what we've heard from what you were doing at Age UK and what you're doing at LTSB now is about creating that open and transparent culture within an organisation that sets the foundation for it to flourish. So it's honestly, I really appreciate you coming on and sharing, and love seeing what you're doing and the difference that it's making day in, day out, and just really inspiring, and appreciate you sharing your story with us today.
Yeah, thanks. And it's always nice to look back and bring up old memories, and have a bit of self-reflection. It's great to be able to do that for me as well. So no, I thank you for the invite.
No, that's great. Well, like I say, Rob, obviously you're happy for us. We'll tag you up on LinkedIn when we post this. If anybody's, just really got questions for Rob, or things they want to follow up, or ideas that I'm sure they want to bounce, or they've got that space in London or Birmingham that they can hire out, give you on for getting the team together.
Maybe not.
Rob's really open to receiving.
If we go for free and not hire it, even better, Adam.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, absolutely. This is all part of your corporate giving opportunity to support. No, perfect. God, Rob, honestly, cheers, mate. Really appreciate you coming on. It's been really good to catch up.
It's great to see you again.
And that's a wrap for this week on the Charity Changemakers podcast. Remember, you can be the change you want to see in the world. We hope that this episode has inspired you to get out there and make a difference. This podcast was brought to you by Charisma Charity Recruitment, one of the UK's leading recruitment consultancies for the charity sector. Whether you're a passionate professional seeking your next challenge, or a charity searching for a top-tier talent, Charisma Charity Recruitment can help. Visit their website at charismarecruitment.co.uk to explore their latest positions, and to connect your organisation with the change makers shaping the future of the non-profit world. Thanks for joining us.